So it's been 2 weeks and a few days since Donald Trump, unfortunately, won his second term of presidency. And notice how the left, the general left, isn't calling voter fraud. We're not pretending like it isn't what it is. It is what it is. We moved on. We're getting ready to adjust and do what we got to do to continue living our lives. And, we've done thorough analyses on how and why the Democrats lost, what they could have done better, yada, yada, yada. But out of everything, I think what really makes me mad more than anything else is the fact that Donald Trump really should be in prison. Donald Trump belongs in prison. And for all the projection and BS that he talked about a two-tier justice system, look at what he was just rewarded with. So, in this segment, we're going to go over an exhaustive list of Donald Trump's lifelong crimes, including the ones that he got over 90 felony indictments for. Okay. And again, you think about all the black and brown people who are rotting away in prison for nonviolent crimes, for selling drugs, for having a bag of drugs, three strike rules, anything like that. But Donald Trump can literally lead an insurrection against the country. Treason. That's treason. He literally can attempt a coup against the nation and have dozens and dozens of felonies and still become president of the United States. That is systemic racism. That is racism. Okay. So, a lot of people don't like to talk about it. A lot of people don't want to hear it. But, let's just start off before we even get into Donald Trump's bigger crimes for what he did while he was president. We'll start off with the fact that was well known for denying leases to black people in his apartments, ripping off thousands of workers in construction companies, literally thousands of people. Trump University, we're going to go over all of this, which he had to pay a $25 million settlement for because he created a fake university where he didn't follow through on anything. They predatory practices highlighting vulnerable people, targeting vulnerable people, encouraging them to take out credit cards just so they could give away as much money as possible to this fake scam ass university where they were supposed to learn all this stuff about real estate. Hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to municipalities and cities around the country for his rallies that he refused to pay. The dozens of women who have accused him of rape, including E. Jean Carroll, who, won her case and he's now an adjudicated rapist and he owes her like $90 million, right? The whole grab him by the pussy. When you're a celebrity, they let you do anything you want. I don't even wait. I don't even ask. Then we got, the pageants where he would just casually brag about how he would go into the dressing rooms of these underage women because he can do that because he's the owner. Cheating on all of his wives, which isn't a crime, but just a good insight into the type of man he is, the type of character he has in his heart and his soul. The hundreds of millions of dollars that he owes in civil lawsuits. Shout out to Letitia James. All of that. The over 90 felony indictments, 34 of which he was charged for. And the whole reason he was running for president the second time was to avoid actually having to go to prison. And now he's back in the White House. Congratulations. Again, I mentioned leading an insurrection against the country and his cabinet full of criminals in his first term, many of them who ended up going to prison. And now he's about to start his second term and he's filling his cabinet with crooks, cronies, and sociopaths. So now let's go ahead and get a little bit into a brief history before we look at these indictments, a brief history of his swindles. And again, long before he got into the White House, he's been a con artist his entire life. That's what he does. And the whole apprentice BS, he was cosplaying as a businessman. So all these people who think that Donald Trump is some type of magnificent genius businessman, it was all a sham. It was all for reality TV. And that's why he's putting, people like Dr. Oz and, luckily Matt Gaetz dropped out, but all these ridiculous people into his cabinet for his second term. So let's go ahead and read a little bit about some of just some of the swindles, just some of them, because despite the fact that he inherited over $400 million from his father and his father bailed him out of all of his problems until he died. People still believe he's a man of the people when his entire platform is nothing but racism. And in this go round, in 2016, I could give you a little bit of a break because he was untested and you didn't really know what he was going to do. But we know what he's about. And in his second term, his campaign for his second term was even more ridiculous, even more bigoted. I mean, like, come on, we know what this dude stands for. Okay. So let's go ahead. So again, this is just a small list, an example of how he rips off everyday average working people for a living, right? So we got Trump's personal driver, and it gets worse after this. After this article, it gets even worse. This is the latest entry in Trump's ledger. No, Centron 59 says he worked as a chauffeur for Trump and his family for 25 years, on top of a mammoth of unpaid overtime bill, 3,300 hours in the last 6 years, 3,300 hours of overtime that was not paid. Centron says he only got a raise twice after 2003 to 68,000 in 2006, and then the $75,000 in 2010. The second bump came with a requirement that Centron gave up his health benefits. So the only way he could get that boost in 2010 is if he gave up his health benefits, because Donald Trump is a cheap asshole. Okay, so he ended up suing him for $350,000 in damages, and we'll go over 3,500. Obviously, not one by one, but in the last 30 years, Donald Trump has been sued over 3,500 times, largely for things like this. Okay, now we got the Philadelphia cabinet maker. We're gonna look even deeper into this in this next article. Edward Friel Jr. owned a family business that harked back to the 1940s. During the Atlantic City boom 4 decades later, he landed a $400,000 contract to make slot machines, bars, desks, and other furniture for Harrah's at Trump's Plaza. But Trump refused to pay the final bill of around $84,000. He just flat out did not pay him $84,000 that he owed. Yeah, we're just not going to pay it because this is who he is. Okay. And that's why his signature accomplishment in his first term was a tax cut for the wealthy and corporations, the biggest tax cut they've ever received. But he's a man of the people. Yeah, okay, give me a break. Friel's son suspected that Trump also used his clout in the industry to block the company from getting another Atlantic City contracts. Friel had to file for bankruptcy a few years later. So, literally, a company that had been in business for decades, because Donald Trump didn't pay $84,000, that ended up putting him into bankruptcy. A paint seller and event workers in Florida, after putting in long hours for a special event at Trump National Doral in Miami. 48 servers had to sue for unpaid overtime. 48 of them had to do that. The settlements averaged around $800 per worker, but went as high as $3,000 in one case. On top of that, a paint shop owner named Juan Carlos Enriquez also sued Trump's business, claiming he never got the final payment for a paint shipment to the same resort. In 2017, after a 3-year legal fight, a court found in Enriquez's favor and ordered Trump's company to pay the final $32,000 plus $300,000 in legal fees. So again, this is who he is. This is what he does. He rips people off and then he, pays a little bit of the damages in court. But he's just a con artist, okay? That's who he is. We know this, but we have to go over this one by one. Well, one by one, we'd be here for weeks. A drapery business in Las Vegas. Back in 2007, Larry Walters got an order for over $700,000 of curtains, pillow covers, and bedspreads for Trump's hotel in Sin City. Walters said additional orders grew the job to $1.2 million, but the developer, a joint venture LLC called Trump Ruffin, only paid $553,000. Eventually, Walters responded by halting work and keeping the remaining fabric as collateral. Trump Ruffin sued. See, so Trump's company sued even though they owed him almost $500,000. Okay. The sheriff's deputies actually showed up at Walters' business to take the fabric away, knowing they could drag the legal fight out. Walters eventually settled for $823,000, about $380,000 short of what he said he was owed. He closed the business in 2011. Donald Trump destroys people's lives for profit, for a little bit of profit. This is what he does. This is who he is. A toilet maker in Atlantic City. And it says here, right here, Walters never had a dispute with any other client. It was 1988 when Forrest Jenkins won a $200,000 contract to install toilet partitions at Trump's Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. This is 1988. For a modest business like Jenkins's, it was a huge score, but thanks to the enormous debts Trump built up, the casino went belly up. Again, a genius businessman who manages to bankrupt multiple casinos because he's an idiot and he doesn't know anything. All right, but thanks to the enormous debts, the casino went belly up just a few years later, and the payment never came. They just never paid him. After years of fighting in bankruptcy court, Jenkins only got $70,000 back and was nearly ruined in the process. According to CNN, dozens of other contractors on the project went through the same ordeal. Again, dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of people over time that he just doesn't pay. This is who he is. This is what he does. There's plenty more, like the jewelry store owner who was strong armed out of his kiosk in Trump Tower, or the West Palm Beach chandelier company that Trump sued to avoid paying half of a $34,000 bill. Even lawyers who helped Trump in his fights with contractors later got into payment fights with Trump himself. He just doesn't pay people, is what he does. And again, keep in mind for his rallies, he got all this money owed for these rallies that he just didn't pay people for. All right, where are we at now? Of course, not everyone who ever worked with Trump is unhappy, and he's won plenty of legal fights. Reuters looked at over 50 court cases and liens related to Trump's project. Quote, the majority said they were paid in full and happy to work for him, but at least a dozen said they had been left out of pocket and had watched as other contractors were shortchanged. A far more sweeping investigation by USA Today found Trump was involved in over 3,500 lawsuits during the last 3 decades. 3,500 lawsuits over the last 3 decades, quote, at least 60 lawsuits, along with hundreds of liens, judgments, and other government filings, were from contractors claiming they got stiffed. Okay. I mean, again, this is routine for him. This is like, it's not a few times like, oh, sorry, I forgot to pay you. No, he intentionally does this. He does this on purpose because he thinks everybody's a sucker. All right. USA Today also found, quote, 24 violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act since 2005 for failing to pay overtime or minimum wage. Trump says this is just business, quote. Let's say that they do a job and that's not good, or a job that they didn't finish, or a job that's way too late. I'll deduct from their contract, absolutely. But again, according to him, he's the one who hires all the best people. Again, according to him, he hires all the best people. He doesn't pay them. So all these people are doing a terrible job, right? So then obviously you don't hire the best people. No, 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 no. This is who he is. This is what he does, right? So, again, and keep the Trump University where he got all these people to sign up because they thought that they were going to learn some secrets and some game about real estate, how to invest in it, how to build, how to contract things out. It was just a scam. It was just a money grab. It was just a way to get people to give as much money as possible. People went bankrupt off of this. People gave everything for this. He's an asshole. He's an absolutely horrible person. Again, like, how do you justify this? And we about to get into all these indictments that he has. And before we even got to that, this is who he was before we even got to that. And all these people think he's a man of the people. Come on, bro. Come on. So, now let's take a look at all these indictments, okay? And again, like I said, even before we get to what he did while he was president, imagine if an everyday regular person just ripped all these people off. They would be in jail, they would be in prison. He's a lifelong criminal. He's the last person on earth who deserves to be in the highest office in the land, the most powerful position on the planet. 90 felony indictments, and this dude gets to be president again versus all these black and brown people who are, hunted by law enforcement because they have no money. How many people are sitting in jail because they don't have enough bail to get out? But this dude can be president again. Okay, so we got 34 charges for the New York Supreme Court for falsifying business records, right? And he got found guilty of 34 counts. This was dismissed over here for Aileen Cannon because she's a corrupt crony. 40 charges for mishandling of classified documents. Just took the documents, nuclear launch codes. Remember, he hid many of them. He stashed many of them in the bathroom next to a toilet in Mar-a-Lago, and he gets to be president again, right? Because nothing matters. Nothing matters. Then we got attempting to overturn the 2020 US presidential election, which is the most serious out of all of it. Thousands of people stormed the Capitol. Thousands of people went to jail, went to prison. The dude, I don't remember his name, but the head of the Proud Boys got like 20 something years because of what he did. Donald Trump's he's gonna pardon these people. He's gonna let them out. I mean, like that, like this is some everyday thing. This is monumentally historic. And again, like I said, what a disgrace to the idea of justice. Republicans could have picked anybody else. They could have went Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley. Well, yeah, right, she's a woman. But again, anybody else they could have went with, but they just had to stick with this dude. And then he gets in office and immediately starts filling his cabinet with neocons. When these people thought, "Oh, Marco Rubio, how could you?" What do you mean, how could you? And then we got here the Fulton County attempting to change the outcome of the 2020 election. 8 there. This is from Fonnie Willis. Like again, we have this man on the phone, recorded on the phone. Find me 11,780 votes. It's one more than we need. Just pull just pull almost 12,000 votes out of your ass and let me get back in there. And mind you, right? He since he won this time, not a peep about voter fraud, not a peep about can we trust the system because he won. I mean, it just completely illegitimizes anything he's ever said in regards to that. Not that anybody with half a brain in their head believed it, but this is just complete BS. 3,500 lawsuits over the last 30 years, many of them from everyday working people that he just stiffed. People went bankrupt because of this dude. People's businesses failed because of him. And then for his campaigning, he owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to municipalities and cities around the country because he just show up and not pay people. Like this dude is a scumbag, and he committed treason. This dude committed treason against the United States, the most powerful nation in the history of civilization. And this dude gets to be president again. But don't you get caught with a bag of cocaine. Don't you get caught with a bag of heroin, or you might be looking at 20 years in prison because you're like, give me a fucking break, man. This shit infuriates me. I mean, how many people do you know who are in jail, prison right now for not really hurting anybody? Or maybe I mean, like this dude's been a criminal his entire life. E. Jean Carroll, he owes her $90 million because he shoved her into a closet. I mean, like, come on, bro. Like, this dude is the biggest scumbag ever. $25 million settlement. He owes millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars because he's a criminal. He's a criminal. But he's in the White House again. Like, bro, I don't want to hear nothing about how dangerous this country is, about how crime's running rampant. And like I said, all the bullshit that this man talked about a two-tiered justice system and his old white ass gets to be president for a second time. Over, again, mind you, we've done plenty of analyses on how the Democrats then messed up and what they could have done differently. But when you just look at Kamala Harris versus him, this was not a difficult decision. It just was not. A qualified black woman who's not a lifelong criminal, who's talking about things like home prices and grocery prices and expanding Medicare to cover in-home care, and y'all vote for a dude who's talking about nothing but tariffs and mass deportations and Hannibal Lecter and Haitians are eating people's dogs and cats. And we watch thousands of people storm the Capitol, and you reward this man with a second term. I'm never going to get over it. Hey now, thank you so much for tuning in here at Politics and Paper. If you like what I do and you support my work, go ahead and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it and really helps to support what we do here.